What if I told you, one man, with nothing but a shaky voice and a $4 guitar, changed the sound of an entire generation? It sounds almost impossible, doesn't it? But that's exactly what happened. Before Elvis Presley, the world of popular music was quiet, polite, predictable. Songs were clean and crooned sweetly. Everything followed the rules. And then he walked in, hips swinging, eyes blazing, and a voice that made teenagers scream and parents panic. Hey there, welcome back to Rise Untold. If you've ever felt like you were born in the wrong era, dreaming of the golden days of rock and roll, of jukeboxes and leather jackets and that thrilling feeling of rebellion, you're not alone. Today, we're telling a story that's as electrifying as his first live performance and just as heartbreaking. Because behind every legend, there's always a human story, full of hope, fear, mistakes, and unforgettable moments. How did a poor boy from Mississippi rise to become the king of rock and roll? Why did his world come crashing down? And what is it about Elvis that keeps us fascinated even decades after his death? Stick around, because you're about to hear a story full of fire, fame, love, heartbreak, and a legacy that refuses to die. Let's start at the beginning. It's 1935, Tupelo, Mississippi. The Great Depression is gripping America. And in a tiny two-room house, a young mother named Gladys brings her twin boys into the world. But only one survives. Jesse Garin is stillborn, and little Elvis Aaron Presley is born alive but frail. It's hard to imagine that fragile baby would grow into the man who'd one day make the world tremble with his voice. From the very start, Elvis was different. He grew up poor, dirt poor, in neighborhoods where black and white families often lived side by side despite segregation. Music was everywhere. Gospel rang through the church on Sundays. Blues poured from front porches on hot Mississippi nights. Country music played on scratchy radios. And little Elvis soaked it all in like a sponge. He was shy as a kid. Awkward even. Other boys teased him about his clothes, hand-me-downs that never quite fit, and his quiet nature. But he found his confidence when he sang. When he closed his eyes and sang those gospel hymns in church, people stopped and listened. By his teens, Elvis had started to dream big. He styled his hair with Vaseline into a slick pompadour. He learned to play the guitar he'd gotten at age 11, he'd wanted a rifle or a bicycle, but his mom said a guitar was safer. He carried that thing everywhere. In 1953, at just 18, Elvis walked into Sun Records in Memphis. He was hoping to cut a cheap record as a gift for his mother, just 2 songs. The receptionist thought he was a little odd, quiet, polite, but with something in his eyes. A few months later, Sun's owner, Sam Phillips, called him back. And then, lightning struck. During a break in recording one night, Elvis started fooling around on his guitar, singing a blues song called That's All Right. But the way he sang it was wild, faster, louder, sexier than anyone had ever done before. Sam Phillips knew instantly, this was it. This was the sound he'd been looking for. Within weeks, Elvis was performing live on local radio. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Teenagers went crazy. His voice was soulful yet dangerous. His moves, the famous hip swing, shocked adults and thrilled kids. For the first time, white kids were screaming for a sound rooted in black rhythm and blues. By 21, Elvis was everywhere. Songs like Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, and Don't Be Cruel shot to the top of the charts. He appeared on TV shows, driving ratings through the roof. Girls fainted. Boys started slicking back their hair and copying his moves. He was rebellious but still polite, which made him impossible to resist. But fame has a way of taking as much as it gives. By the late 50s, Elvis was drafted into the army. He served in Germany, where he met Priscilla Beaulieu, the love of his life, though she was just 14 at the time. After his return to the U.S., his career shifted. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, pushed him into Hollywood movies. At first, they were fun, light musicals that did well at the box office. But over time, the scripts became shallow and repetitive. Elvis hated them but felt trapped. Still, he kept going. He kept smiling for the cameras, kept recording the songs they told him to sing, even though inside, the fire was dimming. By the mid-60s, rock music was changing. The Beatles had arrived. Bob Dylan was writing poetry. And Elvis seemed old-fashioned. But then came 1968. The famous '68 comeback special. Clad in black leather, alone on stage with just his guitar, Elvis showed the world he wasn't done yet. The performance was raw, powerful, magnetic. It reminded everyone why they'd fallen in love with him in the first place. Songs like If I Can Dream and One Night were filled with emotion and soul. That night, Elvis didn't just perform, he roared back to life. For a while, he was on top again. He started performing in Las Vegas, selling out show after show. But the schedule was grueling. The pressure never let up. And in private, he struggled. His marriage to Priscilla fell apart. He became increasingly dependent on prescription drugs to keep him going. By the mid-70s, his health was failing. He'd gained weight. His voice sometimes faltered. Fans noticed, but they still loved him. They still packed his concerts. Because even when he was at his lowest, there was something about Elvis that felt larger than life. On August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley died at his beloved Graceland home. He was just 42. The news shocked the world in a way few events ever had. People couldn't believe it at first. How could someone who seemed larger than life, someone who had always seemed unstoppable, untouchable, suddenly be gone? But as the reality sank in, a wave of grief swept across the globe. Fans gathered outside the gates of Graceland within hours. Some stood in stunned silence, tears streaming down their faces. Others brought flowers, candles, handmade signs. They stood shoulder to shoulder, strangers united by their love for him, singing his songs softly into the hot Memphis night. Radio stations across America, and around the world, began playing his music non-stop. From the moment the news broke, the air was filled with his voice. Songs like Love Me Tender, Suspicious Minds, and Jailhouse Rock seemed to take on new meaning. DJs shared stories about the first time they heard Elvis. Callers phoned in with their own memories, the first record they bought, the concert they went to, how he changed their lives. In the days that followed, newspapers printed front-page headlines mourning the King. Television networks aired tribute specials and old footage of his electrifying performances. Even people who hadn't considered themselves fans before found themselves swept up in the collective sorrow, realizing how much of their lives had been shaped by his music, his style, his presence. And yet, even as the world mourned, there was this quiet realization among many that Elvis Presley was more than just his tragic ending. His story didn't stop at Graceland that day. The man who'd once been dismissed by critics as just another teen idol had left behind a legacy so vast, it couldn't be measured in gold records or box office receipts alone. He had opened doors, musically, culturally, even socially. He had dared to blend genres and ignore boundaries, and in doing so, he had inspired generations of musicians who came after him. Even in death, his influence continued to ripple outward, touching people who hadn't even been born when he was alive. Fans kept coming to Graceland, not just in the days after his passing but year after year, as if visiting a shrine. They came to feel close to him, to stand in the place where his story began and ended, and to remind themselves that legends don't truly die. In every note, every photograph, every memory passed down, Elvis Presley still lived on. And he always would. Because even though he's gone, Elvis still matters. He wasn't just a performer, he was a pioneer. Before Elvis, black and white audiences rarely listened to the same music. He brought people together, whether they realized it or not. He broke down barriers and made rock and roll something everyone wanted to be part of. Most people don't know this, but Elvis never wrote his own songs. He didn't need to. He had a way of making any song his own, of taking someone else's words and filling them with so much heart you believed he'd lived every line. And despite his fame, he was known for his kindness. He gave away cars to strangers. Paid off debts for people he barely knew. If he saw someone struggling, he couldn't just walk away. Today, Graceland is still one of the most visited homes in America. His music still sells millions of copies every year. His style, from the jumpsuits to the pompadour, is still imitated. And when you hear his voice, even now, it still sends chills down your spine. Because Elvis wasn't just a man. He was a moment. A spark that changed everything. So the next time you hear an Elvis song on the radio, or see someone imitating that signature lip curl, remember, it's not just nostalgia. It's a tribute to the man who made music dangerous, sexy, and unforgettable. And now, I've got to ask, what's your favorite Elvis song? Which one still gives you goosebumps every time you hear it? Tell me in the comments. I can't wait to read your answers. And hey, if you loved this story, you'll love our video about Johnny Cash. It's another wild ride through fame, failure, and redemption. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and tap the bell so you never miss another Untold story. Here on Rise Untold, the music never dies.